ask me anything about politics. My name is Jarrett, and I'm here to answer all your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated, be they left wing or right wing. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Democrat or Republican or something else. I'm not here to fight you or debate you or anything like that. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions about politics, regardless of if they are simple or complicated or left wing or right wing. I know politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. So, this is the show where you can ask all of your questions about politics, even if they are extremely simple, even if you've never known anything about politics before. What is up, Querta? Shout out, Querta. Welcome, Querta. Okay, drop a comment, send a gift, shoot me a follow, all that good stuff. Shout out Mikhail Meme, what is up? So yeah, any questions at all, just throw them in the comments, everybody, and we will get to answering them. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are left wing or right wing or something in the middle or something on the outskirts. I don't judge and I don't debate and I don't harass or bully. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions about politics. So throw your politics questions in the comments, send a comment in the chat, and we will get to answering all of your questions about politics. I know there's a lot of misinformation and propaganda out there, so how do we figure out what's going on? Well, you ask your question on this show. Welcome, Sauce Boss. Good to see you again. Shout out, Sauce Boss. Send send a question in the chats, and we will get to answering them. Everybody is welcome here. If you're a Democrat, if you're a Republican, if you're something in the middle or something on the outskirts, there is no judgments here. There's no roasting. There's no debating. There's no harassing. I don't believe in debates. I don't believe that they are productive. I would much rather talk about shit and converse on the substance, and then hopefully we can all have a shared understanding of what's going on in our country and in our government, and that way we're all not, just talking past each other and not actually addressing any of these massive fucking issues. Josh, welcome, Josh. Josh asks, will JD Vance be president next? I think it is very unlikely unless Trump passes away before the end of his term, in which case the vice president almost always becomes president after that. Mikhail Meme says, when was the last time you debated a Republican? I used to do a lot of not like necessarily debates, but just like yelling with people in my comments. And I guess that's the kind of the closest thing. But I've had like good natured discussions with people on the right. Josh says, even though he's backed by Peter Thiel, I think particularly because he's backed by Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel is not, an all powerful kingmaker, and his brand is becoming more and more toxic as days go by. So I do not believe that he has the charisma or the sort of like wide popularity. That he doesn't have the mandate. He doesn't have the records. He's got no platform. He's got no backbone. He's got no moral foundation. He is an empty suit who will do whatever he can for his own power. And I don't believe that America is down with that. The thing about Trump is that he was able to pretend that he was like a common man. He was able to pretend to be charming. He was able to pretend that he cared, and so people got tricked. I don't think JD Vance has the ability to do that. Okay, welcome everybody. Excellent questions so far. Excellent comments. Throw your comments in the chat. Send a gift. Send a like. Shoot me a follow. But most importantly, put your questions about politics in the chat, and we will get to answering them. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, or something on the outskirts. This is not a debate show. I know there's a lot of really popular shows out there where Republicans and Democrats yell at each other and try to win their debates or win their arguments or whatever. That is not what we do here. I don't think I don't think it's a productive thing to do. All right, welcome Landon Phillips. Shout out Landon Phillips. Landon Phillips asks, do you feel there is a huge change from Trump's first and second term? Yeah, I mean, the biggest change is that a lot of the sort of adults in the room are no longer there, where Trump really wasn't prepared to win, so he didn't have the kind of like fascist playbook ready to go. And when it came to staffing the government, he just picked a whole bunch of Republicans that other Republicans were telling him were good. But those Republicans were more institutionalists. Those Republicans were more like neocons as opposed to MAGA fascists. And so they did not allow him to do all of the crazy shit that he wanted to do. There were a lot of them in Congress, also in addition to them being in his cabinet and being appointed to various positions. So yeah, so a lot of the worst excesses were stopped by the adults in the room in the first term, and those people aren't there anymore. Project 2025, one of the pillars of it was we are not going to have anybody in this administration who is not a 100% loyalist to the Donald Trump agenda. We are not going to, and if there's anybody in Congress or any judges that are not 100% on board with the Trump agenda, then we will do what we can to get rid of those as well. Okay, excellent questions. Welcome, Hugh OD. Shout out to Hugh OD says, did you see Trump call Iran Japan? I did not. Would not surprise me if that was real. Welcome, Based. Shout out, Based says, what do you think of tongue, sour accelerationism? I don't know what that is. Welcome, Fog War Productions. Shout out, Fog War Productions says, how do we get American liberals to abandon their incessant Europhilia? I don't think that that's a real issue. Fog War Productions. Am I wrong about that? I think that most people on the left in America can recognize that other countries do things well, but I don't think that we are constantly essing Europe's D. Welcome, AJC says thoughts on Farage standing down. So this is not my area of expertise, but people that are much smarter than me have said that this is kind of like a stunt where I think that he was like going to get indicted or something. And so he's basically calling this by election where nobody else is running besides what's his name, Aluminum Bin Face or whatever the dude's name is. So he's most likely just going to get reelected again. Yeah, it's a stunt. There's no real substance behind it. Okay, Ecuadorian, great to see you again. Mikhail Meme says, when was the last time you heard anything about Sweden on the news for you? I mean, I see good news coming out of Sweden. Like there's usually like something about oh, you guys just put a whole bunch of solar panels on top of a mountain or something, and everybody was saying it was a bad idea, and it ends up being a really good idea. Okay, Ecuadorian asks how my day has been. It's been good, but having a baby is tiring. Sauce Boss says, "Did you see what happened with Graham Plattner? Was there like a further development? All I saw was that there was a new accusation of sexual assault. Everybody's calling on him to drop out. He gave like a really weird, overly written apology, sort of, kind of explanation video, but I did not see if there was any up to the minute updates. Ricardo, welcome, Ricardo says, did you hear Palpatine? That's a Star Wars question. Diego Vargas, welcome, Diego Vargas says, was Iran the main sponsor of terrorism in the Middle East? I don't know. Yeah, sorry, Diego Vargas. That one's a little over my head there. Mr. Voice says, "Can I come up, bud?" I'm gonna say maybe. I am very mercurial about when I allow people to come up. So if you're patient and you hang around, maybe you'll get lucky. Fogwar Production says, "This is a real issue for me. I am the disembodied poltergeist of James Monroe." Oh, I see. Okay, well, we should definitely we should definitely get on that. Welcome, Alien Abduction Survivor. Alien Abduction Survivor asks, why should we be expected to provide a better life for third worlders? That's a really good question, Alien Abduction Survivor. So, every problem that is being experienced in the quote unquote third world can eventually make its way to America. Even if you're just looking at things like poverty and starvation, all of those things can lead to diseases that can become dangerous and very easily transmittable to us here in mainland America. So yeah, it behooves us to stop those problems before they come here. That's number one. There's also like more cynical reasons to provide that kind of support. Like we stop future terrorist attacks by taking care of other countries that could potentially be mad at us for stealing all of the resources from the third world in order to make ourselves wealthy. Having a good image of America means that if they ever do discover some valuable resources underneath their soil, then they will potentially allow us to purchase it or access it in some way. And then also, it's just the morally right thing to do. I understand that that's not a very convincing argument for some people, but I think that it's important that we mention that if Jesus Christ was here, that he would tell you that that is the thing to do, is to help others, you know. Mo Mira, welcome. Mo Mira says, "Do you like remigration?" No, that is a racist, anti-immigration policy. All right, welcome. Video game girls GMV says, "Which party did Epstein fund?" I believe he funded both parties. Welcome, Mr. Toast says, "Why does Trump allowed to be president even though he was a 34-time felon?" It's unfortunately it's what we call the Air Bud doctrine, where there wasn't really a rule against a convicted felon becoming president. So, ergo, a convicted felon was allowed to be president. All right, Just Mary. Welcome, Just Mary says, "Want Jesus Christ a sinner?" I don't know what that means. Welcome, Sam. Sam says, "What's your thoughts on homosexuality? If somebody is gay, then good for them, I suppose. If they want to be gay, or if they don't want to be gay, if they're gay, whatever, you know, whatever floats your boat, you know, variety is the spice of life. You should be allowed to live whatever kind of life that you like, so long as it is not infringing on the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of other citizens." All right, John Abbott says, "Did you see the video of Trump talking to Teddy Roosevelt AI and apparently not understanding what he wasn't talking to the real Teddy?" Yeah, I don't know. I didn't see that video. I heard people talking about it. I try not to watch that dude if I can't. You know, it spikes my blood pressure. Okay, welcome, Mr. Swagtastic says, "Will Israel destroy the Al Aqsa Mosque?" I do not know if they have any plans on doing that. But it does seem as though Israel is continuing to warmonger in the region. All right, welcome, Big Berto says, "Why does left libertarian mean complete? What does left libertarian mean completely? I took my political compass test yesterday." So I don't know if that political compass test is accurate or valuable. If I'm remembering correctly, somebody told me that it was kind of like a right wing propaganda tool. Like no matter how you answer the questions, it puts you in some libertarian perspective. You know. So yeah, I don't know if I would trust that. And I don't. You know, a libertarian basically believes that we should reduce the size of the government to non-existence. You know, some certain famous libertarians have said we should get rid of the IRS and the FDA and the FTC and shit like that. And that is, you know, that is just what billionaires want, so that they can do whatever they want. You know. Okay, welcome, Ace. Ace says, "One way Trump could damage Iran is speed up America's green energy production to get us off oil faster." That would be amazing, Ace, but Trump is not going to do that because he's heavily invested with the fossil fuel industry. All right, Just Mary, shout out Just Mary says, "It's black or white. Either you believe grape is a blessing or you don't." I do not believe that grape is a blessing, Just Mary. Mr. Swagtastic, shout out Mr. Swagtastic says, "Are you a Marxist Leninist? If not, why?" I just that's not a label that I am all that familiar with. I believe that it's better for workers to own the means of production. I like employee-owned companies, but there's too much to explain by describing yourself as a Marxist Leninist. There's just too much fear mongering. I prefer a progressive Democrat. Fog War Production says, "I like the Libertarian Party because they are mad funny." I don't know. I don't know if it's funny to, you know, to dismantle your own government to the point where bears take over your town. Okay, Big Berto says, "Okay, I get your point. I believe reform is needed for the FDA and CDC, but not removal. Thank you." I agree, Big Berto. But also, you know, the argument about reform, it always seems a little too much of a layup, where it's like, yeah, I'm sure that there is some bureaucracy that can be cleaned up. I'm sure that there are some issues, but largely these are organizations that are doing incredible work. You know, uh, yeah. The biggest problem with the FDA and the CDC is, you know, people can be appointed to them that are contrary to the goals of the organizations. A says, "Why can't we just take what is working from other countries and bring it over here?" Well, some people have this weird nationalistic idea that everything that we do should be American, and so if something is European, that means it's bad. If something is Scandinavian, it means it's bad. You know, etc., etc. Josh says, "Is Mamdani as a democratic socialist damaging New York?" No, he's doing a great job. I have only heard good things. Caleb says, "How do we combat the misinformation coming from the right? I believe Charlie Kirk did a lot of damage." I think that you are accurate in that assessment, Caleb, and I think that the way that we combat misinformation is that we talk to people in real life and make sure that they're not falling for any misinformation. Social media is a misinformation and propaganda machine. It is owned and operated and manipulated by the billionaire class and right-wing psychopaths. And so there's not there's too much power in their hands. They have weaponized this tool so effectively that there's no amount of videos or live streams that we can do to fully counter the misinformation. We just have to talk to people in real life. We have to talk to our friends, our neighbors, our family members, our coworkers, the people that already know us and trust us. And if you have the time and the energy, you could do what's called deep canvassing, where you start introducing yourself to people that you don't immediately know in your neighborhood or in the next neighborhood over and talking to them and making sure that they're not believing any misinformation or propaganda. I would definitely recommend, if that's your vibe, I would check out an organization called Ground Truth. I believe it is an offshoot of Swing Left. I could be wrong about that. You could also check out a book called The Persuaders by Anand Giridharadas. That's the way. That's the only way to do it, in my opinion. All right, welcome, Damian Justice says, why are there lifetime politicians? Because we don't have term limits for people in Congress, and we should. All right, Doha Vintage Watches says, can you go to the supermarket without a pew in the US? Yes, you can. And in fact, most places you should. Okay, Mikhail Meme says, why are there so many processed foods in the US? Well, a lot of those were developed here. They're very utilitarian, even if they are potentially carcinogenic, carcinogenous. Even though they could potentially give you cancer. And a lot of our identity has been around that, has been around like the technology of food and in making it, like cookie cutter and shit like that. Carcinogenic. Thank you, Josh. Okay, Fog War Productions says, how can America be more effective as a multicultural empire? I mean, do we want it to be an empire, Fog of War? All right, this guy's just saying the N word, so we're going to go ahead and block that account. Caleb says, I'd argue misinformation is the reason Democrats lost in 2024. That is one of my main points, Caleb, and I fucking agree with you on that 100%. I think that there's also, the incumbency bias that a lot of people felt all around the world, but definitely, misinformation and propaganda was a huge part of it. Okay, Foghorn Production says it kind of is. It's a physically massive country with lots of cultures in it. I don't know. I mean, I guess you could say that America is technically an empire. Do we ascribe to be an empire? At one point, are you your own land so long that you no longer are an empire? You just are what you are. Is there a Ship of Theseus version of taking a country, absorbing it, and now that's your country? At what point are we no longer, looking at whatever country enveloped Constantinople and calling them an empire? Okay, Josh says, was it really 6 million? I mean, if that's a World War II question, then yes, Okay, Mikhail Meme says, should it be illegal for white people to just say the N word and not mean it offensively? I mean, I don't know if it should be illegal, but it's just not a good idea. Like, just don't, like, don't call your wife a bitch. Don't say the N word. It's pretty simple. Okay, user watch number says, will Serbia and Kosovo go to war again? I have no idea. C Flan, great to see you again. Welcome, C Flan. Shout out C Flan. To everybody else, welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jared. I'm here to answer all of your questions about politics. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, or something on the outskirts. Send a gift, send a comment, ask your questions in the comments. What else? Shoot me a follow. Anyways, welcome, Small Peener says, would you advise the DNC to stop trying to defy misogyny and run a man so they can win? So the DNC doesn't decide who runs and who doesn't run, Small Peener. Obviously, there's the notable exception of the 2024 race, but that was an exception and not the rule. It's the voters that decide who is going to be the Democratic nominee. So it's the voters who will decide whether or not they want to take a chance on running a woman or running a person of color or running somebody who's part of the LGBTQ community. Okay. Josh says, will you run? No, I will not run. Very unlikely that I will run. Ace says, is it true Kamala will run again? It does look like she is trying to. Okay. Average Joe says, have you watched Netflix comedy special Nice to Meet You by Jeff R. Curry yet? I have not, but I do like Jeff's comedy. I think he's pretty funny. Okay. Carlito says, RIP. Mitch McConnell. Has that officially come out, or are we being hyperbolic? Are we saying it very much appears as though he was dead and currently is dead? Let me know. I don't know. Last I heard is a bunch of Republicans in the Senate were saying that he's still alive and that they talked on the phone, and I was like, doubt, but you know, I suppose this is the hill you want to die on, you know. Okay, let's see here. Damien Justice says that did happen last time with Kamala. That was a contradiction. I mean, I don't know if I would say it's a contradiction. It's an exception. And honestly, I would love to hear what you think was a better idea than moving the nomination to the vice president. Anybody who had a problem with Kamala Harris being installed as the nominee, I would love to hear what you think should have happened with 107 days left until the election. All right, Sauce Boss says they will drag out the McConnell thing for as long as possible so he doesn't get replaced. Yeah, probably. Damien Justice says Bernie Sanders since 2016. Is that a question? Baptiste says, "Do you know French politics? I know very little, but I fuck with the French and how strong their unions are, how willing they are to strike. You know, I fuck with that shit. That's the vibe I want here in America." Ace says, I mean, if you ban the N word because it's hurtful, what's stopping the government from banning F the government for the same reason? You know, Ace, you make a good point. The legislating around the First Amendment is difficult. You know, are we making certain words and phrases illegal? Or do we have a different test for it? Like, you're not allowed to shout fire in a crowded theater. That is speech that directly causes human suffering and violence and shit like that. So I think that we already have carve outs for that kind of thing. Generally speaking, I tend to be, chill about trying to make more speech illegal. Like, I'm not being dogmatic here. I'm not trying to make the N word illegal or make hate speech or anything illegal. But I also don't believe that there should be no consequences if you say the N word at your job, for example, and you're a white person. Baptiste says, you don't like France? No, opposite. I like France. I fuck with the French. That's a good thing, Baptiste. I don't know how well you speak English, but when we say I fuck with blank, that means I like that thing. So it's like, if some place sells really good burgers, you go, I fuck with the burgers over there. That means I love those burgers. All right, Brian B says there was not enough time, so Kamala was the right choice, and I would vote for her again. Completely agree with that, Brian B. Welcome, Brian B. Shout out, Brian B. Okay, Aiden. Welcome, Aiden. Says, how do you feel about Jill Stein? I have been suspicious of Jill Stein's motivations for a long time because she doesn't really do anything to build up the Green Party. She just pops in every 4 years to do these ego-driven cash grab spoiler candidate runs for presidency. There's also some evidence that has come out recently to suggest that she is an agent of the Russian government. So I am, I don't care for her. The big thumbs down on her. Shout out Lauren. Welcome, Lauren. Great to see you again. Baptiste says, okay, I'm French and love politics. All right. Well, I don't know. The only thing I know about French politics is do not vote for Marine Le Pen. That you guys need to coalesce around other nominees so that the far right wing cannot win in France. Like, this is the best part about France, is that you don't fuck with the right, you know? Y'all fucking did Vichy France. Like, that was the shit, man. Like unions, workers' rights, fuck the billionaire class, you know? Yeah, do not let Marine Le Pen change what it means to be French. Okay. Billford Gymnuts, great to see you again. Shout out Billford Gymnuts. Says, do you agree that Democratic ideology is right wing? No, I do not. Chris 8X, welcome Chris 8X, says, how do you see the conflict in Iran developing? Ceasefire is donezo. So, really good question, Chris. Nobody really knows what's going to happen. Trump is, Nixon created this like madman theory of foreign politics where it was like, other nations should think that you are crazy enough to just, shoot a whole bunch of nukes at them. Unfortunately, Trump literally is a madman. So, like, this is not a thing that he is this is not an image that he is putting out there. Like he really is a psychopath. So it's concerning. It is concerning. He does not have the patience or the intelligence or the tact to actually do diplomacy, to actually do statecraft. So he just blusters around and he tries to bribe people and threaten people. And where it works, hooray, bully for him. But where it doesn't, things just continue to escalate or get worse. So I can't say I'm surprised that he dipped out on actually trying to end the war in Iran and that he's just like, all right, I guess I'm just gonna put fucking boots on the ground then. It almost seems, and I could be wrong about this, remember, political predictions are worthless, but it almost seems as though there is a concerted effort right now by people like Trump, Putin, and Netanyahu to escalate things in such a way that the world gets so much worse that they are able to entrench themselves in power further. So, like Netanyahu can't be voted out if there are so many active wars that Israel is waging in the Middle East, you know, and I think potentially Trump is looking at that in the same way. Like, can we incite some sort of a terrorist attack here in America to the point where I can declare a national emergency and declare myself president for life until we're able to restore some law and order to this country? It's very concerning. This is all kind of like speculation on my part, but it does kind of seem like the people who are doing the saber rattling are also cutting things with those sabers. Okay, Bill for Gymnut says the left begins at anti-capitalism greed? Question mark. I don't know what that means. Bill for Gymnuts. Can you rephrase? Welcome 2028 US says thoughts on using the military to build the housing, bullet trains, and road infrastructure. I mean, there's the Army Corps of Engineers, which is they actually do build things. Like they actually do build roads and shit like that. I don't know if that is the most efficient use of our military. I don't know if that is what they're mainly trained to do. I don't know. Like why can we not have a government corps of engineers that are hired to do that job specifically? Like right now, one of the only things that you can do if you are just like a destitute young person is you can join the military. But why isn't there like a government hiring program that'll be like, we will make you into an electrical engineer, we will make you into a plumber, we will make you into a person who builds high speed rail? Like that seems to be like a really good use of all of these unemployed people that are around there so long. 2028 says their budget is so big. Well, I think we should solve. I don't think that we should use the military's budget to do that. I think we should force the military to pass an audit, and then we'll have extra money by which we could do that in other organizations. Bill for Gymnet says, you said Democrats aren't right wing. The left begins at anti capitalism and D are capitalist. No, so the Democratic Party, Bilford, is a big tent. And there are Democrats in that party, elected Democrats, who would describe themselves as capitalists. And there are Democrats within the party who would describe themselves as democratic socialists, people who have a lot of criticisms of the way that capitalism is currently working, who want to tax the rich, who want to regulate businesses, who want to give more power to the working class. So while it is true that you could say that there are some people that aren't far left enough for your taste in the Democratic Party, I would never say that the Democratic Party itself is right wing just because it has those people in it. Okay, Bilford Gymnut says, but no anti-capitalists. I don't know, Bilford. I don't know. I don't know if being anti-capitalist is a useful philosophy. Do you really believe that we should have an economy and government that says that you are not allowed to start a business if you want? Is that how far anti-capitalism goes for you, Bilford? Arthur C says, you look kind of like Joaquin Phoenix. I really love the spelling error there because then it makes it sound like somebody made a copy of Joaquin Phoenix. Somebody made too many Xerox copies of Joaquin Phoenix, and then his face got all futzed, and now he's Joaquin Phoenix. But I appreciate that. That's a very nice thing to say. He's an attractive fellow. Okay, Lauren says Trump speaks sloshily and carry a big shtick. That's funny. Right, welcome Dave Lopez says, can we agree that both red and blue ain't doing it anymore for many years now? No, I disagree with that, Dave Lopez. The Democratic Party has done a lot of good for America. They have stopped a lot of bad from happening. the Republican Party has done a lot of damage to America. If you look at the platforms, the history, the politicians, there are massive differences between the two parties. And I would argue that the Democratic Party has been way, 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 way better for the majority of Americans than the Republican Party has, even if it hasn't solved every one of our problems in a timely fashion, even if it hasn't gone far enough at times. Yeah, I don't buy that. I don't buy that framing at all, Dave. Fog War Production says, "What if I said vast multicultural democracy instead?" That I fucks with. I fucks with that. Fog War Productions. I think that part of that is part of that redounds to the culture. Like right now, we have a billionaire class that is funding narratives to specifically say that America should not be a multicultural democracy, and the billionaires are funding political campaigns for politicians who can legislate a non-functioning multicultural democracy. Like it is entirely the fault of the Republican Party and the billionaire class that we are just they're dismantling the Voting Rights Act, which is part of the way that multiculturalism exists in America, where if you are part of a marginalized community, you get to have a say in who is in the government. So yeah, I think that we need to 100%. I think that we need to address that. Part of addressing that is taking the power away from the billionaire class to denigrate that. But there's a lot of art out there hyping up the multiculturalism of America and how great it is. And I think that we need to keep on doing that and eschew any art that is coming out of the billionaire class that is trying to convince us otherwise. Okay, Bill for Jim says, I believe the means of production should be in the hands of the working class. I completely agree with that, Bill for Jim Nuts. So let's elect politicians who are going to do that, who are going to move us in that direction. And that is, by and large, the Democratic Party. And I should say, like, we're seeing a lot of movement in the Democratic Party towards the left. Like, just this year alone, a lot of DSA style candidates have been winning their primary elections. Hopefully, they win the general and not Republicans. But even if you vote, even if Chuck Schumer wins re-election, that's still better for the Bernie Sanderses that are in the Senate than if a Republican takes Chuck Schumer's seat. You know what I mean? Okay, let's see here. Anything interesting going on over here? All right. Haywood Jablomi. Welcome, Haywood Jablomi. Great to see you. Says, why do we hold Democrats like Plattner held to higher standards than Republicans for Trump? So that is a really good question, Haywood Jablomi. I love it when people with silly names ask substantive questions. So how do we address this? It is 100% accurate to say that the culture of America is to say that Democratic politicians have to be perfect and Republican politicians can be whatever the fuck they want. That is an accurate thing to say about the way that America views various politicians. It's not fair, but that is the way that it works, unfortunately. I would say that part of this is to blame. I believe that the billionaire class kind of created this culture very specifically so that it would be more difficult for Democratic candidates to get elected, but that's neither here nor there. I think we need to address the fact that if somebody has done a sex crime in their past, that they probably should not be trusted to be in government. Maybe we can readdress this issue in the future when we know that somebody has made amends for alleged sex crimes, but that's neither here nor there. Living in this world that we live in now, where Democrats are going to be judged way harsher, where the bar cannot be high enough for Democrats and the bar cannot be low enough for Republicans, I think there are a couple things that we need to do. Number one, we need to individually be the people who say that it is okay for our politicians to be flawed. Before the sexual assault allegation came out, I was one of the people that was saying, hey, Graham Plattner is a flawed person with a flawed past, but that does not mean that he can't be a great senator. He's out there, he's connecting with people, he's got a great message, so let's all give him a chance. Unfortunately, I have to draw the line at sexual assault. So that's one thing that I can't say that we look past at this point. But we can all be the champions of that. We can all be the champions of, okay, yeah, that person voted for a thing that we don't like anymore, but they have been legislating away from that for a really long time. So we can all agree that it's okay to be flawed human beings and also be in the Democratic Party. We need to do something about this idea that people have that the Republican Party cannot be shitty enough for us to ever justify voting for Democrats just to get rid of them. Like, I think personally that the Republican Party has done so much damage and is so toxic that it is worth voting for any Democrat just to get that Republican out of power. Now, I also think the Democratic Party has great politicians in it, and I think they have a really good platform. So I think that there's a double benefit there, but I don't understand why some people think that voting out Republicans isn't enough. Like, why aren't you, the Democrats, giving me an inspiring, hope-filled message to get me off of the couch to vote for you? It's like, I don't know, because one party's trying to fucking kill us all. Like that seems motivation enough to fucking vote against them, right? You know, the Supreme Court is undoing the Voting Rights Act. The Republicans in Congress are allowing the president to have a fucking Bitcoin and sell political pardons and build fucking torture prisons and just have his own private Gestapo, just murdering fucking American citizens left and right and starting illegal wars in Iran that are fucking spiraling all of our healthcare and oil costs like out of like. You don't want to stop this? You don't think it's important just to stop that? We also have to give you a different version of the future that's not just not that. Like, that's enough for me, you know? So anyways, so yeah, short version, we all have to be the messengers and get and just to stop this dynamic, to stop this idea that the Democrats can never be good enough and the Republicans can never be bad enough. Mikhail Meme asks, "Do you snooze, Jared? Is that like the nicotine things?" No, I do not. I do not do that. Okay, Havrilla Gorilla. That's a fun name to say. Welcome, Havrilla Gorilla. Havrilla Gorilla asks, "Can you debate that Canada's better guy? Debate me about it. LOL." I'm not gonna argue that any country is better or worse than any other country. I would say I would much rather have your government right now than what we currently have in America. Okay. Gosh says, "Is Trump the worst president of all time?" I think it is pretty clear that that is the case. Gosh, I think it is obvious that that is the case. If somebody wants to make a case for a different person in history being a worse president, I'd love to hear it. But I think it is impossible that there would be a more corrupt president in American history. Triska, Beaning Movies, Joe Padilla, and Mia, thank you so much for helping me reach my first gift goal of the day. TikTok Central has sent me a challenge to get like a bunch of different gifts. So if you are a gifting viewer of mine, I would encourage you to find different kinds of gifts to send so that I can achieve my challenge. I don't know what the value of these challenges are, but I don't know. Sometimes I try to play the game. You know what I mean? All right, James Witham. Welcome, James Witham. Good to see you. It says, "Why does America want to be isolationist while still acting as the world's police?" So that's a really good question. There's a bunch of different factions within America that have different ideas about what America's foreign policy should look like. And some people believe that there is real value in being kind of like the world police. And some people believe that we need to, just completely block ourselves off trade wise, military wise, etc. And I think that the answer to that is obviously some combination. I do not believe that we should stop sending military aid to Ukraine. I do not believe that we should stop doing USAID. But I think that it's clear that we should have stopped sending money and weapons to Israel a long ass time ago. So yeah, I think that what you're looking at here is also a sort of like a foundational hypocrisy within the Republican Party, as their base is constantly shouting and their politicians are claiming to care about things like, America first. They are continuing to fund and support the Netanyahu administration and continue to warmonger and start fights in Iran and shit like that. So yeah, it's American politics is real messy, especially when you have shit like the Republican Party happening. Joe Padilla and Papa and Tink and Triska, thank you so much for all these gifts. I really appreciate it. All right, John Technologies, Democratic Party doesn't change the imperialism and neocolonialism America does to other countries. So that is inaccurate, John Technology. I could point you to the Iran nuclear deal. I could point you to normalization between Cuba and America. I could point you to the Paris Climate Accords. Like the Democratic Party is instrumental in changing that dynamic. They have in the past, and people keep on voting for Republicans. So a lot of the Democratic Party's warmongering is largely based on the idea that America believes the Democratic Party are wussies, and so Democratic politicians are kind of like bullied into being, dropping bombs and drone strikes and shit like that. Okay, John Technology says Obama killed more people than Trump. Libby, I do not believe that is accurate at all. John Technology, please ask me to expand on that. I would love to. I would love to tell you how Trump has killed way more people than Obama. All right, Bill for Gymnet says, do you expect a party that endorses the ruling class to undermine them and hands power to the people? What are you talking about when you say a party that endorses the ruling class? Are you talking about the Democratic Party, Bilford? Because I do not believe the Democratic Party is doing that. I do not believe the Democratic Party is endorsing the billionaire class. I do not believe that the Democratic Party is guilty of the crimes that you are accusing them of. Okay. Opposed Chimera says, what is one thing that Republicans do better than Democrats? Lie, cheat, and steal. That's three things. Casper says, why should we have a murderer in jail living off our tax money instead of giving the death penalty? Really good question. I believe that it is actually more expensive to put someone to death than to have them live their life in jail, but that's kind of beside the point, in my opinion. There are two main reasons why I think that we should not have the death penalty. One of them is that we have a very bad record of putting people to death who are innocent of any and all crimes. And I think that is a fucking travesty. I think that is a sin that we all carry with us and that we will never be able to fully cleanse off of our country. The fact that we have put people to death who have done absolutely nothing wrong. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is it's not a deterrent. That's supposed to be like a big thing, right? Like it's not a deterrent. Joe Padilla, thank you so much for helping me reach my first finger hearts goal of the day. Yeah, I just don't believe that it is morally right for the state to put people to death. I think that that's a wrong thing to do. Okay. Let's see here. Bill for Gymnet says, so establishment corporate Democrats just don't exist. No, they exist, but first of all, they are not out there saying that the billionaire class is great and they're better than us and we shouldn't tax them. But also, they are not the entirety of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is mostly not that and becoming less that every year that we exist. Bilfords, do you not agree that is the case? Okay, let's see here. Axel asks, what's your political ideology? I'm a progressive Democrat. John Technologies, Obama bombed more countries than Trump. Both parties are the same. Both parties are not the same, John Technology. And I don't believe that is accurate, that Obama bombed more countries than Trump. I think that because Trump bombed Iran, he has bombed exactly one more country than Obama bombed. I think it's important that you recognize why presidents bomb certain countries. Like Obama bombed Libya because he was trying to support the revolutionaries who were standing up against Gaddafi. Like, I think that's a better reason than Trump bombing Iran because Israel fucking told him to. I think that if you just look at the damage that Doge did to organizations like USAID, to starving children, to children who are getting AIDS medication and tuberculosis medication, I think it is obvious that Trump has killed way more people than Obama did. But I don't actually think that you are here in good faith, John Technology. John Technology's Gaddafi was a better man than Obama, so that's a block. Yeah. But thank you for allowing me to get that information out there, even though you are just here to spread misinformation. Okay. Bill for Gymnast says the Democratic establishment will always try to undermine progress. Unless we change the Democratic establishment, Bill for Gymnuts, you know that is a very likely possibility. With all of the left-wing Democrats that are currently getting elected, people like Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, their positions are no longer guaranteed. Bilford, do you not see that as a very likely outcome? of 26 and 28. Bill Ferds, it seems as though you are ignoring progress that has happened. You are ignoring the good that the Democratic Party has done. You are ignoring the good politicians within the Democratic Party, Bilford. Joe Padilla says, any thoughts on Mitch McConnell? Hold on a second. Bilford Jimnet says, I disagree full-heartedly. Well, you can't disagree with facts, my guy. So, the mechanisms exist for us to change the Democratic Party from within. They're called primary elections. And it is currently happening. We are currently watching the Democratic Party become more left-wing and more progressive and less corporatist and less establishment every single day that goes by. And you can agree with that or disagree with it, but it is actually fucking happening. So whether you think it's a good idea or a bad idea, whether you think that they haven't done enough to deserve our love and respect, I guess that's completely up to you. But I find people who are this dogmatic about being anti-Democratic Party to be sus as hell. Bilford Gymnast says, I'm a Reagan baby. Incrementalism has gotten us next to nothing since then. Completely disagree. Incrementalism got us the Affordable Care Act, and there are people alive today because of it, Bilford. I got to be honest, I'm getting kind of tired of your dogmatically insisting that Democrats are equally as bad as Republicans. Casper asks, what is your argument for people saying both Democrats and Republicans are shit? Short version, there are so many differences between the parties. There are so many differences in outcomes. There are so many differences in their policy platforms. There are people alive today because of the Affordable Care Act, which is only possible because people voted for Democrats. And there are women today who are dead because of abortion bans that were only possible because people voted for Republicans. Anywhere you look, there are differences depending on who is in charge. So happy to go into more detail on that. Sorry, Joe Padilla had asked me any thoughts on Mitch McConnell. I do not believe there are a couple of Republican senators that claim that they have had phone calls with Mitch McConnell. I don't believe that is real, but I could be wrong about that. I just firmly believe that Mitch McConnell is no longer amongst us. Either he is in a vegetative state or he is no longer alive. I could be wrong. John Thune doesn't usually lie in that way. But you can't really put it past them. Okay, Owen Wheatley says they're not equally as bad, but the difference between them is minuscule. Completely disagree with that, Owen Wheatley. The Democratic Party passed the Inflation Reduction Act during the Biden administration, and that was printing a nuclear power plant's worth of solar panels every single day. The Trump administration is spending $1 billion of our tax dollars to cancel wind power projects that are already 90% built. That is not a minuscule difference. Tell the families of Renee Good and Alex Preddy that there is a minuscule difference between if Kamala Harris had won and Donald Trump had won. Tell you what, why don't you go to an ICE detention facility and talk to all of the veterans and Native Americans and citizens and green card holders that are currently being illegally detained there and tortured and fed maggot-infested food, that the differences between the two political parties are minuscule. Why don't you tell the families of the schoolgirls that were bombed in Iran that the difference between the two political parties is minuscule? Tell somebody who's alive today because of the Affordable Care Act that the difference between the two parties is minuscule. Tell the families of the women who are no longer able to have children because of abortion bans. Tell the families of women who are dead because of abortion bans that the difference between the two political parties is minuscule. Tell the deficit, which has fucking tripled under Republican presidents. Bilford Gymnut says Guantanamo Bay is still open. Wow, you found one thing, man. Congratulations, you found one thing. That's amazing. That's amazing. You found one thing. Wow, good for you, man. Bilford, you're not here in good faith. You have an agenda, so you're out of here. I'm sorry, buddy. Okay, Joey says both sides are corrupt. Tim Walz covering up for billions of dollars of Somali fraud ain't better. Tim Walz did not cover up billions of dollars of Somali fraud. Joey, would you like me to go into more detail on that? Let me know. Owen Wheatley says, tell the innocent civilians tortured in black sites under the Democratic Party. You mean the fewer? I don't know what you're referring to, Owen Wheatley. I don't even know if that's a thing that happened, but it seems pretty sus. Jesus. Hold on a second. James Whitney says, I'll be real. If I was in America, I would 100% vote Democrats. I still wouldn't be happy about it. I mean, you don't have to be happy about it, but can you please at least stop the Republican Party from gaining more power? Can you please at least vote out the Republicans so that we can at least have a country that doesn't get worse than it currently is? Good Lord. Unbelievable. The cognitive dissonance, the willful obtuseness of people who refuse to see the good of the Democratic Party. Sus as hell, man. Because what's the value? What are you actually accomplishing? You are making people less excited to vote to be part of the democratic process. You are making it easier for Republicans to win elections. Sus as fucking hell. Sus as hell. Are you being paid by a billionaire to do this, to make it easier for Republicans to get elected? I do not buy your shit for one fucking second. Owen Wheatley. Yeah. Let's add up all the innocent civilians who are being tortured or murdered under Republican administrations versus Democratic administrations and see which one is more. Spoiler alert. It's Republicans. Republicans are worse. Okay, Owen Wheatley says the enemy of the people isn't just Republicans. That's why it's the entire capitalist bourgeoisie. Blah 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 blah. Owen, like, miss me with that. Better is better and worse is worse. Better is better and worse is worse. What is your plan, Owen? You gonna start throwing Molotov cocktails? You gonna light a CVS on fire? You gonna fucking light a Waymo on fire? Because I have a plan that I am advocating for, and a plan that is currently working. If you don't like the Democratic Party, replace them in the primaries. It's happening right now. And then all you got to do is then vote for those Democrats in the general election. All right. Laura says, do you like Donald Trump? No, I do not. Casper says, why do Republicans say that it's underpopulated and ban abortion, then don't allow mass migration? Because they're hypocrites, Casper. They are racist hypocrites. My wife is telling me not to lose it. I'm having fun. I'm having fun today, man. I'm having a good time. All right, Dennis says, I've not received my doggy check or my Terra Freebase check yet, but I'm sure it's in the mail. Sure thing. Sure thing, Dennis. Hold on a second. This guy just calls me a Jew, so that's going to be a block there. Live notification says, is being an independent more controversial than being a Democrat or Republican? No, I don't think so. I think that there are a lot of people that view being independent as being like the only mature choice, the only like free thinking choice, and that everybody who is a registered Democrat or Republican is just like drinking the Kool-Aid of their specific party. I think that that is a wildly misinformed position, and I think that every informed human being should be voting for the Democratic Party. Okay, Turt says Republican is the only way forward. That is not a question, Turt, and I do not have the patience to engage with you. Okay, Gilby says option on legionnarism. Don't know what that means. Catherine Alines, welcome, Catherine Alines, says, can you give a shout out to Abdul El Sayed in Michigan? Our primary is August 4th. Absolutely. I fucking love Abdul El Sayed. Fucking great progressive candidate for Senate that has the potential to win the nomination for the party instead of one of these corporate Democrats that everybody seems to think are the worst things in the entire fucking world. Here we got somebody here for you guys to support. Abdul El Sayed in Michigan. Primary is August 4th. Donate to his campaign. Make phone calls for his campaign. Put your fucking money where your mouth is and actually support these progressive Democrats. Make the Democratic Party better from the inside out. And then suddenly people won't have any more fucking excuses for not voting. You know, hey, I'm a cowboy. Boo, 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 boo. Welcome, Waffle Science says, are you involved with your local Democratic Party? I am not. I've done a lot of volunteering and activism in the past, but I am currently a new father, so no, I am not currently involved. Jason Tatum says, are you gay? Just asking. No, I am not. If you really want to know if I'm gay or not, ask your mom. Aurelia says, is it looked down upon in society in a friend group when someone says they're Republicans? I mean, it depends on where you are, Aurelia. Like, there are parts of this country where, If you say you're a Republican, you'll get yelled at. There are parts of this country where if you say you're a Democrat, you'll get yelled at. But yeah, I think that mostly if you are talking to somebody in real life, people are generally chill and they're like, "Oh, that's weird that you feel that way, especially here in New York or in Mobile, Alabama or wherever." And then people usually have good faith conversations as opposed to just going, "Fuck you." Woo." Okay, some dude 381 says, "Is it easier to protest under Democrats than it is Republicans?" Yes, that is 100% accurate because the Democratic Party actually respects your right to protest. The Republican Party have nominated twice, 3 times for president, a guy who said we should shoot protesters in the leg. Joey says 250 million vanished on his watch, and we're supposed to call that leadership. What are you talking about, Joey? 250 million what vanished on his watch? James Witham says xenophobia is the biggest plague in America. As a European, terrifying for me to even travel there. Completely agree with that. Joe Padilla says your guns sound like lasers. What? Pew 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 pew. Meow meow. So I guess the gun sounds would be like, and the laser sounds would be pew pew pew. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, Joey says, circling back to the Tim Walz comment when you claimed he wasn't involved in Somali fraud. He was not involved in the fraud. Tim Walz has been at the forefront of putting those people in jail. He has been working with the federal government to put the people involved in that fraud in jail, Joey. So, yeah, I'm not saying that fraud didn't happen. I'm saying that Tim Walz was involved in it. There's no evidence that Tim Walz was either involved or covered it up or didn't notice it was happening, Joey. Are you also upset about fraud that happens in Florida and Texas and Tennessee, or is it just Democratic states that you have a problem with fraud? Because there is fraud happening in Texas and Florida, Tennessee, and Alabama. Joey, let me know. Waffle Science says, I work an hour a month and am one of 500 Dems that will elect New Mexico's lieutenant governor. Oh, well, I'm glad to have you there. Jason Tatum says, why are you against Palestine? I'm not. I'm not against any country. Scott Clara says, ICE comes knocking on your door now if you disagree with their tactics. That is 100% true. John says, Tim Walz was directly involved in allowing the fraud to continue. That is inaccurate, John. That is a lie. Please do not spread misinformation on my live stream or I'll have to boot you. Scott Clara says, DeSantis stole $20 million from Medicaid. That is accurate. Joey says, good to see you admit it's fraud and that they should be thrown in jail. It isn't Islamophobia. They already are in jail, Joey. Did you know that the person in charge of that was a white lady? Did you know that, Joey? Because people keep on calling it the Tim Walz Somali fraud when Tim Walz and Somalians had absolutely nothing to do with it. James Witham says, I used to live in Albany as a kid. I always thought I'd come back to the U.S. Now's not really the time. Waffle Science says, getting involved with your local party is super easy. I was elected by 8 of my neighbors. That's it. Oh, I'm really glad to hear that, Waffle Science. I 100% am down with what you're advocating for. Owen Wheatley says, not against Palestine, but you act like the Democrats are good. They are. They are. I guarantee you that if the Palestinians could come over here and talk to you, they would beg you to vote for Democrats over Republicans. Things are so much worse for Gaza and the West Bank under Republicans than they were under Joe Biden. It is extremely myopic and a privileged position of ignorance to think that there has been zero difference for the people of Palestine under Democratic leadership in America versus Republican leadership in America. And I'm happy to go into more detail on that if you like, Owen Wheatley. But yeah, you are 100% wrong about that. Obamacare says, would you vote for Count Binface from the UK? I mean, over Nigel Farage? Absolutely. Owen Wheatley says, the Democrats being a lesser evil doesn't mean they're good. For fuck's sake, ask if Palestinians like Biden then. But better is better and worse is worse, Owen. There would be more Palestinians alive today if people voted for Kamala Harris. Can you admit that? The fact that you won't is extremely sus. You are sus as hell, Owen. The fact that you are trying to smear the Democratic Party as just as bad as Republicans is a Republican propaganda tactic. It is a billionaire-funded tactic. You are sus as hell, Owen. You are sus as hell. I do not buy your shit for a second. Better is better and worse is worse. Doesn't matter when better is still genocide. But how about less genocide? Less genocide is better than more genocide, don't you think, Owen? If we are giving people doing genocide 2,000-pound bombs, is that better or worse than not sending them 2,000-pound bombs, Owen? You're full of it, man. You are so close to being booted. You either ask a question, Owen, or you're out of here. Joey says, when you claim fraud is happening in Republican states as well, proves my point that both sides suck. No, that's just not the case, Joey. Let me just say something very quickly here. Any human being saying that both sides are the same or both sides, any version of that narrative, you are doing the work of the Republican Party. You are doing the work of the billionaire class. And I have given 1,000 examples today about how that is inaccurate. And some of you have heard those examples and are still claiming it to be the case. And y'all are sus as hell. And I just want to let you know that I got my fucking finger on the pulse and I'm seeing you. I see you what you're doing. And it is only because I am busy answering questions and debunking all of your bullshit that I've not been able to block you as effectively and efficiently as I might have wanted. All right, James Witham says, what role should European countries play in responding to the Trump administration's policies? They should stand up to him. It does not work to try to S his D. That is the only way. That is the only way to deal with bullies. Okay, let's see here. Kyle says, genuinely curious, what things have the Democrats done for working class in America? Excellent question, Kyle. I'll just go through a short list here. The Inflation Reduction Act brought the Trump-caused inflation from 9% to 2.4%. Bringing down costs helps working class Americans. The Biden administration was the very first presidential administration to walk a picket line with a striking labor union. The NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, is an adjudicative body that decides on disputes between workers and CEOs. And under the Biden administration, the NLRB was siding with the unions more than they have been in a generation. Part of the reason why unions have lost power and corporations have gained power is because of monopolization. And the Democratic Party put Lena Khan in charge of the FTC, and she was in the process of breaking apart these monopolies. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was started by the Democratic Party. That was paying American citizens back when they were defrauded by giant corporations. Let's see here. There's just a handful for you right there. I could go on. Okay, Bogos Binted. Excellent question. Bogos Binted says, didn't Biden order the railway workers back to work? How is that pro-union? Excellent question, Bogos Binted. So this one, it really does seem like it is anti-union until you actually look at the details. First of all, Rem V, Tink, and Triska, thank you so much for helping me reach my second finger hearts goal of the day. We have got to start wrapping things up, so we're going to go straight to High Bears, and I'm going to answer this question about the Rail Workers Union, and then I'm going to get out of here. So everybody, thank you for your support. Like, share, send gifts on TikTok, send bits on Twitch, be a super fan or a fan on TikTok, be a subscriber on Twitch. If you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe to my Twitch channel for free. Costs you $0, helps me out a ton. I fucking love it. Aurelia says, how often do you go live? Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time is my regular schedule. Let's see here. You can also join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. You can join my Discord. Links are in the bio. Lots of great stuff there. Oh, Joe Padilla and Triska helped me reach my High Bear goal, which is very, very sweet of them. Okay, I really want to get to this question about the Rail Workers Union. So let me get to that, everybody. Okay, so what would have happened if the rail workers had striked? What would have happened is people who don't have a lot of money in America would have been hurt because the cost of goods would have gone up and the medical supply chains would have gotten fucked. And so people in hospitals would have gotten fucked. It would have been a fucking disaster. And so it is true to say that the Democratic Party, Democratic and Republican Party under the Biden administration, forced the Rail Workers Union to accept the most recent compromise instead of going on strike. Now, it's important to recognize that this was a wildly popular compromise. Like, I think it was like 8 of the 11 rail workers unions were already on board with this compromise, and it was only like the 4 holdouts that wanted to go on strike. The Democratic Party tried to add an amendment to the law that they passed saying that the rail workers union were not allowed to strike, giving the rail workers union the sick days that they wanted to hold out for, that they wanted to strike for. And the Republican Party filibustered that amendment. So the Democratic Party was trying to give the Rail Workers Union everything they wanted. Republicans got in the way. So, in an attempt to keep the fucking economy from crashing, marginalized communities from being hit with higher costs, and people dying in hospitals because they weren't able to get medical supplies, yes, it is true that as a stopgap measure, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party under the Biden administration made it illegal for the Rail Workers Union to go on strike. But that's not even the end of the story, guys. That's not even where the story ends. What happened was then behind the scenes, the Biden administration started renegotiating with the rail workers and their corporations and got them their sick days. The Biden administration got the rail workers union the thing that they wanted without having to go on strike. They didn't have to lose their paychecks. We didn't have to suffer the economic and fucking healthcare disaster that the strike would have been. They literally got everything they wanted because of the Biden administration. So let me know. Let me know. Let me know y'all heard about that. Let me know, Bogos. Thank you, Bogos. I appreciate it. That's the one I was looking for. All right, everybody, do the work. That's the only way we get out of this. Be good to each other. You don't have to be a dick to do the work. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. Regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. So I will see you guys tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.